Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now. Yo, what is happening? Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very excited to have on the one and only Mr. Conan Neutron on the program today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, Randy Randall. Conan Neutron is very much in the pocket of the Hyphenate life. He fronts an incredible band called Conan Neutron and Secret Friends, as well as being a highly successful podcaster with his very own podcast, Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. He also has another podcast, because if that's not enough, called Movie Night Extravaganza that he does with a few awesome friends, and I've been fortunate enough to be a guest on it, talking about the incredible film Office Space. But again, if that is not enough, Mr. Conan Neutron has even more for you. He is the curator of an incredible festival. It is called Caterwaul, and this is in Minneapolis. Although he is living in Milwaukee, he curates and books and promotes the Caterwaul Music Festival. So he's got 2 podcasts, a band that records and tours, puts records out, and as well as booking an incredible festival. So I would say that firmly cements his place in the Hyphenate book of all stars. So I'm really looking forward for everybody to hear this, and thank you, Conan, for coming on. Let's check it out. The mighty Conan Neutron. Holy shit, thank you so much for being on Hyphenate with Randy Randall.
I'm so stoked to be on it. Thank you for having me.
This is incredible. So I have to bow down. You are obviously one of the godfathers of podcasting, and guys, making loud guitar sounds going into podcasting. I feel like I'm coasting in your breeze. I don't know what the correct phrase is. Where do they do that in the France, the Tour de France? The one guy coasts off the speed. Yeah. So I'm in your trail here. This is, but it's great.
I prefer the term podfather.
Podfather,
but
Ooh, okay.
That's what I said to Rick Valentin and Rose, who, I mean, they've been doing it since the 90s, before there was a term called podcasting. Yeah. So, and then I thought that was very clever, and Rick was like, just chuckle. Like, come on,
it was a good one.
Father, that's great.
I got my
one. Yeah.
I got my hand slapped using the podcast word, the P word, around Mike Watt. He's like, don't call it a podcast.
He does not like it.
Internet radio show.
No.
Okay, I didn't
know. He
gets
super pissed about it.
He's really mad.
And the other thing is that if a band doesn't have a website too, he gets bummed out by that too, which I agree with. I completely agree with that. It's
your own zine.
Props to Watt.
It's your own zine. You could
your own zine.
Tell the world about yourself. How are they going to find your dates? How are they going to find where you're going to play? I don't know.
Exactly.
On the internet.
I feel like I'm talking to him right now. Actually, yeah. No, it's it's awesome. So we just Protonic. It's me. Yeah. I literally do everything. It's like. Are
you the royal we? Yeah. Do you refer to Conan in the Conan sense?
Yeah. 9 years, just at the time of this recording, like 2 weeks ago. 9 years, 334 episodes, which is a shorter amount. I mean, it's still a great accomplishment. I mean, some people are up to 900 and stuff. They have staffs. they have producers that do all the grunt work.
Yeah.
They don't tour and make records. Most of them, and whatever.
You have a life
and the way I look
at
it.
Yeah.
Sure, and it's still a pretty good body of work, if I do say so myself.
It's huge. Yeah.
But it's quality too. I don't just do it because time to poop out another episode. It's when I do it, it's for good reason. And the key to that show, to Protonic Controversial, is that I only have people on that I'm interested in. And I know that might sound obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's the key to the show. Like, I've been pitched some pretty cool things that I'm like, that would be a big show, but that's not right for me.
Oh, wow.
And people are like surprised. It's like, oh, you don't want to, why wouldn't you want to do? I'm like, well, have you heard the show? I mean, my sort of deep understanding and interest in who's on is what makes it special. And because I come from a world of being an active recording and touring musician, it comes from a more informed place, and you get a different kind of conversation when you're talking to someone else in the game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's sort of, and there's nothing wrong with like the Terry Grosses of the world who are just they're fantastic at what they do, but is it different? It's they're coming at it from looking at it like a museum piece or something.
Yeah, or they're journalism. They're documenting unknown foreign subjects, versus being in the trenches with a coworker type of feel.
Yeah, it's ultimately going to be a little bit alien, and so like critics of the show as well as fans of the show have said like it sometimes can get a little bit too chummy, and it's like, well, okay, but that's kind of the strength of the show, when you're and you cross paths, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you play music, you cross paths with other musicians, you find common cause, and I think there's more agency and for me interest in that than being the Mark Maron of whatever. Because Mark Maron already does
Mark
that.
Maron is the Mark
Know what I
Maron
mean?
of Mark Maron. Yeah.
And he's the best at being the Mark Maron or whatever. I'm going to be the Conan Neutron of being Conan Neutron. And does that mean, like, do I have a deep cackling supervillain laugh? Yes, I do. And I'm sorry if that bothers you, but you're going to have to deal with it, friends.
Do you know the show Yeah Dudes? Jonathan and Seth?
Oh, yeah.
It's an old LA podcast.
I used to listen to, is that still going?
I think so. Yeah. I think they're still.
I used to like regularly listen to it, and then I think when I changed phones, I just forgot to resubscribe to it or something. But yeah, that's a great show. I like that show.
The reason I bring it up is Jonathan has worked at many, where he worked at Future Music, which is a kind of used music store here in LA when it was on Sunset Boulevard years ago, and I knew him from those days when we were all much younger and not as fat. And then as we've gotten older and fatter, I've still stayed in touch with him. But the best thing, but he would be on.
I like how you linked to those two things because, by the way, I'm very proud that I lost 10 pounds in the past month.
Congratulations, that's huge. Yeah. I know the battle. It's I struggle with it myself. But
after that fall tour, I saw some pictures. I'm like, these are great pictures. Oh my god,
the side view. I hate the people that come on the side of the stage and take that side picture. Like, no, come on, just go in front. It looks good in front. The side is wide. The front is
and
good.
Just crop from the belt up, and then we're good. Like we don't need to see you don't need to see that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so didn't mean it.
So the story was so
near and dear to my heart.
Right. So Jonathan has the show, Yeah Dude, and he works at used music shop. And I talked, but he's not always there because he gets busy, and he's a part-time worker now because his podcast is going so well. And so I'm talking to the boss man, Jack at Future, and he And I'm like, where's Jonathan? Why isn't he here? And he's like, he's got this damn podcast. And this is whatever, 15 years ago or whenever they started to do really well.
Yeah, he's real busy with his podcast.
Yeah, some bullshit. But it was the perfect thing. No one's ever summed up what podcast, because I was new to the whole idea of podcasting. I wasn't listening to podcasts at that time.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And basically what, the curmudgeonly Jack Watterson at Future Music said is like, podcasts, it's like, if you don't have any friends, you can put headphones on and listen to two friends talk. It's like for lonely people. And I was like, ooh, that hurts. But as over the years, as my life has gone on and I've listened to more and more podcasts, I'm like, you know what? I kind of miss my days of being a 20-year-old who hung out with friends all day long and hung out at bars all night and worked at jobs at video stores and record stores where I just shot the shit with friends and strangers for, 18 hours of my day was spent just talking about nothing and bullshit. But I miss that time. And now I'm a dad of two and I work, from home.
You don't
and
get
I have
out
a
as
life
much.
I'm in bed by 8 o'clock, and so if I can steal away an hour or two of just hearing two knuckleheads jabbering on about bad '80s movies or guitars or records or things that are in my nerd realm, I love it. And so I took that to heart as like a criticism, but also a very cutting description of this thing. And so I think the idea of what you're saying, it's a conversation. It's like, this is whoever's listening to this probably wants to hear two guys jabbering on about bullshit.
Well, it's a dismissive and vaguely insulting thing to say, but there is truth into it. It doesn't have to be phrased that way. A good example. This is something that largely has happened on tour. Do I say post-COVID? We're not really post-COVID, but like getting back to touring after a global pandemic is that people will come up that listen to the show, and this is how it always happens, Randy. They're like, "Hey, man, I love the show. I listen all the time." I'm like, "Cool, you don't have to whisper."
I'm not ashamed of it.
It's okay.
I do it in public. I tell people I do this. Yeah, it's not a secret.
I talk about it all the time. But like they'll come up to the merch table at Conan Neutron The Secret Friend shows to talk about that. I'm like, great, grab a sticker. That's why I have these stickers here. You know? But they want to talk to you
they want to be in the podcast with you. They're coming to you
because they feel like they
know you so well, right? Yeah.
So when they don't lead with that, they'll just start talking to me like we're good buddies. And I am the person, like Tony in my band is like terrible with people. Like, he's great with people, but he doesn't remember names and faces very well. It's not really his role in the band, right? Yeah. I usually do. So I'm like horror stricken. I'm like, fuck, how do I know? Sorry. I'm like, how do I know this person?
Yeah, I don't care.
I was like, how do I and then I'll like mentally be like, okay, when was the last time we were in Seattle? Well, let's see, it was this show. And then they'll be like, oh, I listened to the show. I'm like, oh, thank God.
That's why we're friends. Like, we're friends and I've never met you before.
And I'm fine with that, but like that will sometimes put me in a deep state of anxiety. Like while I'm like on one hand I'm holding a conversation, and then in the little Star Trek Enterprise like command center in my brain, like that's like a red alert trying to figure out who this person is.
Yeah,
but I
oh, sorry. No.
I was gonna say, but I love that. I love when people want to talk about the show. I'm 100% down for it. Like, I mean, like I was like, great, let's talk about the show. Oh, the so and so episode was so great. Mike Kunka's like the best dude ever. I can't believe that Damon Che interview. Blah blah blah. Whatever. Like. Great. I'll talk. I mean, I'm not going to be like, cool, make way.
This is rock show time. There is no podcast talk here. Right, this is rock talk only. Would you like to talk about my cab? Do you know the vintage 30s I have loaded in to this cabinet that you cannot see behind the grill cloth? I would love to only answer questions about my flat patch cables.
My pedal board is wired in stereo so that I can blah, blah. Okay, great. Great.
Oh, no, it's great.
Anyway,
it's so good. Yeah, no, early on in dating my wife, I was fortunate enough that people knew whatever I was doing, and people would walk up to me like, "Hey, how's it going?" and start talking to me and stuff. And she'd look at me and go, "Do you know that person?" I had no idea. I don't know. I'm probably closer to your bandmate, where like the faces and names just kind of go together, and it's not rude. It's just there's only so much there. But if someone wants to come up and have a nice conversation. Sounds great. Yeah. Good to see you has become my go-to. Not good to meet you. Hey, it's good to see you. Whether I've seen you now for the 100th time or the first time, it is still good to see you. And I just
got plausible deniability.
Yeah. And if they give me a backstory,
and it is good to see them.
It
is.
Sure, of course. You know my name. You want to talk to me. I like this. I like seeing you do this to me. Thank you.
You have some interest in some aspect of what I do in my life, and appreciate dealing with you as a human.
Yeah,
great.
Let's shake hands and talk about guitars. I don't know. Did I jump on your head?
What are you talking about? Let's go. Exactly.
Are your ears still ringing? That's usually the one. Like, oh, my ears are still ringing from that show, or my T-shirt fell apart. Like, those are all great things.
Yeah.
I love hearing all of those things.
I've definitely had a couple, and this is like from back in the Replicator days. I've had a couple of people be like, "Yeah, you played Bellingham and you climbed up on me during the set." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like me."
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
I don't do that as much anymore.
Yeah, I am also a sober person now. I have 13 years of sobriety, so there was a long span of time prior to that in which, again, plausible deniability of like, "Yeah, people tell me we were so drunk at XYZ," or I'm like, "Sounds right," and I also that is also why I do not remember any of that going on. Like, do you have a picture?
Yeah, that's like David Yao, man.
Oh,
like,
wow, yeah.
He's done so many like amazing things where he's like, huh.
You remember
Yeah,
that?
I did
that. It's great. Okay, so I want to get into it. So sorry to be too pedantic,
sorry,
but I would
I'm
love
taking...
to. No. I would love to talk a little bit more about a biography a little bit. Like tell me a little bit about yourself, where you got started, and prior
Sure.
because so the theme of the show Hyphenate is I talk to people who are multi-talented and who are known for excelling in more than one field, and obviously yourself as a singer, songwriter, recording, touring musician, and also as a podcaster, as well as I think there's a few other things on the table as well. But we'll start kind of with those two dichotomies. So where do you come from, and how'd you first get started in music?
Yes, I was born in a town called Modesto, California, in the Central Valley. That is, it goes like Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto, Fresno, Bakersfield, et cetera, et cetera. So about the dead center of California, which culturally has more in common with Kansas than LA or San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
Like it's pretty conservative farming area. And at 17, I moved up to Oakland with my best friend, and we got a $510 a month apartment, which is astounding. like, I mean, you can tell like how long ago that was by me saying that. And I worked at Tower Records, the fourth best record store out of 4 in Berkeley, for minimum wage, which really set me on my path to musical discovery because I had instant access to things like Birthday Party and Stooges, and even like that's why I was like, oh, there's like jazz stuff I really like. Oh, there's this old country stuff is like really cool, as opposed to all this like gnarly stuff that I would hear on the radio in Central Valley and just like this is horrible and I wish it would stop. So that was sort of my musical education, and then I came up, started playing music. I guess a little later than most. My first real band was this band called Replicator that was around for technically 8 years, probably more like 9 or 10, and we made records and toured. And that was largely based on the fact that just nobody was having what we were throwing down, like in the Bay Area. So we're like, well, let's. I think what bands do is they go other places, right? Because I was a student of rock and roll before I really ever played it. Folks like Mike Watt, Poster Children, right? Like the bands that would like do these tour diaries where I would like learn about, this is what it's like to be on tour. And I decided that was something I wanted to do. My bandmates did also. So, and that band did a lot. Like I said, that's where I first started playing The Smell when we were starting to talk.
Yep,
like we played The Smell tons and tons, lots of legendary bills.
What years are this? What was your year? Was your first tour? First proper we're in the van, hitting the road.
2000. The first national tour I think was 2002. Okay. Like we got off the West Coast and started doing U.S. tours, and that's where it was like, oh. Like, we discovered the thing that, like, every band that tours does. It's like, oh, there's pockets of resistance in, like, different places that, like, they really like us in this city, which is very far from our home. And, like, you can like, plot out a tour that gets to that city and, like, know that you have, like, something that's going to be good for waiting for you there.
Sioux Falls, which is going to go off.
Right. Like, whatever it is. Yeah. And it may not be remotely close to you, but you can kind of hang your hope and hang your hat on that and make it like sort of financially feasible. We were the kings of breaking even. That's the thing. It's arguable that band ever made money when we were actually around, but we never lost money.
That's huge.
Which is
huge.
Huge, yeah, especially. And like when you're dudes in your 20s that are like have not career jobs is probably the best way to put it. That's what you got to do to keep the boat moving. And so that was and I lived in the Bay Area 22 years. Basically, we got priced out. It's like I got to see the Borg basically take over the Bay Area, and all the wonderful artists that made us a great place to live. They all had to go somewhere else, and most of them went down to L.A. But I decided that I'd like to go to some place that has a lower cost of living, but a higher standard of living, and was geographically an easy place to tour from.
Yeah.
And this is like well past Replicate. At this point, Conan Neutron and Secret Friends is a thing. But it was something where Milwaukee made a lot of sense for a lot of reasons.
I love Milwaukee.
And at Milwaukee, our Milwaukee shows, every band I've been in, which is not really that many, frankly, we've always had great Milwaukee shows. It's always been like, it always felt like home.
That's cool.
And like Seattle was on the docket as well, but Seattle kind of like started to become
infested there
too.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It was like, no, this is almost as bad.
Ago.
Like, are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
So we ended up moving to Milwaukee in August 2017, and that's where I've been ever since. But Oakland is, I may not live there anymore, but it's still my home, if that makes sense. I sort of emancipated myself from Modesto. I don't really speak of it that often unless someone like brings it up. When Granddaddy kind of became like a big deal, especially in the UK, I get all these English people that would be like, "Oh, you grew up in Modesto. That must have been so lovely." I'm like, "No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all."
Do you talk to Jason at all? Did you know him growing up, or was that not part of your scene?
No, like those dudes are like a class above me.
Okay.
I've met him now, but I did not know any of those dudes. I like them. I think they're great.
Yeah.
But like, that drinking beer around the country song, it's like, oh, that's not like a pastoral affectation. That's literally just like what you do on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like exactly a hotbed of creativity, just because there's like one admittedly very brilliant band from there. I mean, same thing with like Stockton, like that city Pavin's from, and like, do they still live there? No, they don't. So, you know why? It's horrible. Anyway,
it's a good place to be from, and
so from the central.
Good place to leave.
Yeah, great place to.
Yeah.
So my tagline. This was back when I guess I still say it because I'm about to say it, but like when I would do zine interviews, when I would do zine interviews, would be like, it's a great place to be from because it gives you plenty to rebel against, is what I would say.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then Oakland was your base of operations. I'm trying to think of friends. I mean, I knew George Chen and like the Zum crew.
Oh,
was
George
that
is...
so he came down here to LA a little while ago, and also as a podcast.
Yeah, that's like the Spock Morgue. That was Spock Morgue world. There was a lot of overlap from that and our little thing. Our little world was kind of the freaks, nerds, and weirdos that didn't fit with like the metal bands or the indie rock bands or like the super experimental bands.
Gotcha.
I had the audacity to call it the International Noise Rock Underground, even though it like. I just thought that sounded cool. Yeah, it was like the International Noise Rock Underground, and it was a. Get this, Randy. It was a Yahoo group that I started. Did
I email?
Well, actually, no. It was an E group. Then a Yahoo group.
I saw my
because Yahoo bought them out.
I still have my Yahoo email address. That's my favorite one. I'll keep it till they're gone. I think
I'm glad to show that.
Yeah, I probably fell in with the noisier side of Oakland because we started. It sounds like very parallel. Like we had a band called Wives. Dean, my partner in No Age, and myself.
Oh yeah,
and we would play. We would tour up the West Coast, probably right around that same sort of time, that 2000s, early 2001.
Yeah, Pink and Brown, and what is it? Numbers. And
we played with Racerata a few times, I think.
Racerata. Ellie used to work at Real Video, which was right down the street from my house. We always would hang out and talk about like Jodorowsky.
I remember going in there. Yeah, I remember going in there on tour, and I think she was showing us around the neighborhood, and we went in there. And I worked at Rocket Video down here in Hollywood for years. I was a big movie nerd as well, and I went to film school I went to a school that had a film school. Then I never got in, and. But yeah, so that era. But our first U.S. tour we did was with a band called Hail Zukas, which had John from A Minor Forest and Rob from Eat Skull, I think was his thing. And then he went on, I forget, he had some other things as well. But it was we like met up with them halfway. Like it was a kind of, it was just two bands out there that had no idea what they were doing. And we sort of if we both do it together, we can both not know what we're doing. We can have this, instead of having two competing 5 people shows, we could have a 10-person show in a basement somewhere.
Right. Yeah, we can pool our resources. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Did you ever play with like a Total Shutdown and any of them?
No, I knew
any of those guys.
No, I know those from George put them out, right? That was his world. No, I don't think we ever played with them.
There was a lot. I mean, there was a ton of some of those bands we were friends with, some we weren't. But it was all like sort of in the zeitgeist at the time. It's weird though because it's like, other than a few bands, I feel like I don't know. I feel like that era is like just gone from history because there's this big 90s revivalism and then people are trying to revive like the 2010s. I'm like, didn't that just happen?
There's a beautiful early aughts thing that kind of happened.
Yeah, there's a whole like remember when Les Savy Fab was like gonna take over the world because that was kind of a nice moment. I mean, Lightning Bolt somehow managed to persevere. Good for them,
God, yeah,
you know,
yeah, my God, yeah. That first U.S. tour we did, we played some shows with Lightning Bolt, and what was the USA is a Monster. Which is
yeah. Those guys are great.
Yeah. So when we eventually became a 2-piece, it wasn't far. It felt like there are many kinds of 2-pieces. It's not just White Stripes, or Black Keys. It's like, well, no, there's all these other great, amazing, weird noise 2-pieces that we felt like we were kind of in the style of those things. But
our friends in the Meishi kind of had a moment too. Like they were, and that was cool. I still like Jeff's. Well, technically Tim's a buddy too, but like I talk to Jeff all the time. Like he's
okay. There we go. There's the connection. There we go. Yeah, I know those guys as well.
Yeah, like Jeff's on. Turbo Lightning is on. There's a Conan Neutron The Secret Friends single series called Protons and Electrons, and the conceit of it is that protons, electrons, neutrons make the atom, but the other the bands on the other side all have some connection to the band. Whether it's that they play in the band, whether they recorded the band, or just like, some point of history of the band. Anyway, Turbo Lightning, one of Jeff's bands, they're on one of them. And then he also did some overdubs for our song. And like he sent me a Queen record basically. He sent me like I was like there's like 40 tracks. I'm like, Jeff, this is way too much. He's like oh, just use whatever you want. And like I was like, okay. But it was pure Jeff Byron, and I mean that in the best possible way.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It was like I actually we never did it. I was like we could have made a remix that was just all his overdubs, like drums and like all like just whatever Jeff was
editions.
Up to.
That's incredible. Okay, so
I guess I could still do it. I think I still got the tracks. I hadn't thought about it for years. I was like,
Bandcamp Friday.
A while ago.
There we go.
I know.
Yeah.
That's actually a good idea because we haven't had anything. We've got like, well, we have a record with Lung coming out in the fall.
Cool.
Fingers crossed. That's a split record. And it's kind of awesome because we cover one of their songs, they cover one of those songs. I've always wanted to do that. And then we do a collab song on both sides. Like I wrote a duet with Kate for our side, and then Tony and I do, and Dale, do our stuff on their song as well. And then we have another record that I need to like finish like a couple of vocals for that I assume is going to come out like next year because it's pretty much done at this point. But I've also like the last few Bandcamp Fridays, I'm terrible about like, oh shoot, that's coming up. Do I have anything new? It's like, not really. And then I put up like this single that's going to be on the new record. And then Reiner from Learning Curve, like when I was mentioning, should I do another one? He's like, you should probably leave something for the record. I'm like,
no, it's all singles.
That's a good point.
It's all singles these days. There's no records anymore. Yeah.
I mean,
it's all a collection of singles from one to the next to the next. If it didn't come out yesterday or tomorrow, then.
But the thing is, people only pay attention to it if it's a record, or at least that's been my experience.
They say.
But then like they don't listen to it that way. So it's like the same thing where if you want college radio, you got to make CDs and send them out. Luckily, we sell CDs. I don't know why.
That's insane.
Actually, I do know why. It's because of Crover. It's because of the Melvin script. But we make them largely to send out to college radio because that's what you got to do. And it's like, how is that not on digital yet?
I love college radio so much, and I always want to do it more. But No Age puts out records on Drag City for the last couple that we've done. And,
yeah.
And I'm always always telling them like, can we do like college radio? Can we like go and like hang out and like? I still kind of come from that world of like walking into a college radio station. Yeah. It just feels like that Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory kind of thing. Like, wow, look at all the old
it's got that
stuff
cool energy,
all the stacks and
the shelves that are just like, oh man, check it out, Sonic Youth, and like like whatever, like oh cool.
But I realize it's a bygone
and then you get
era.
to like and you get to talk to these like complete freaks, and I mean this is a compliment, who are just like obsessed with music, but like maybe they never would go to a show, but they are just like this like like Yoda like figure of whatever they're into. And then like when you do like the God, I mean, some places will have like you could do like a live session or whatever.
Oh,
like
it's such an honor. It's incredible to do those.
We did this one CDR that we sold on tour that was live at KXLU, and it was like some stuff before You're Under Surveillance record.
Yeah,
and like we were just like, what should we do for art? I'm like, I don't know, put a wizard on it. And so we put a wizard on it. And I don't think I even have a copy of that anymore, but we sold like, whatever, a few hundred of them. That's and great. Put gas in the tank.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love, KXLU was one of those first kind of places when we got to go play a live thing there. It just felt like, we've made it. Okay, I don't need MTV. I don't need anything else. I am in studio at KXLU.
KXLU.
This is, because I learned a lot about music, through college radio and through barely tuning in on the low left end of the dial, just trying to like eke out something like, what is this? And then writing, I kept a little journal next to the radio too, and I'd write stuff down like this said I think there was the word blonde redhead. I'm just gonna go to the record store and ask for the I'm gonna say these words to the clerk and see what they say back. I'm like, I heard this on the radio, I think this is correct. And then they walked me over to an area where there were 7 inches. I was like, okay, I will buy a blonde redhead 7-inch, thank you. And then went home and it was like, I did this, I did it correctly. I correctly translated what I heard on the radio. Like that sounded cool and interesting in my kind of little bleak, unknown sort of, corner of my world.
Do you remember that band Hovercraft?
Yeah.
I found out about them through KXLU because it was just on. I was like, what is this? Wow. This is crazy. I love it.
Yeah.
And I went to Amoeba and like they had like 2 Hovercraft CDs in the used bin, and it was like $2. Done. I'm like, hell yes, let's go.
I know. I love pining for the bygone era of these physical media things. But somebody would I was listening to oh my god, I'm spacing on the director. Postmortem with Mick Garris. He has a great kind of horror movie podcast, but he had a great sort of thing of talking about. That streaming is basically, gone are the drive-ins, gone are the, the video stores where you'd sort of like discover these things. But in essence, it's all moved onto streaming, and which could be said for music. And the way that you have to hear about it, it's also now online. That there's little blogs or there's like a little corner of the world, or even things like this where people can champion the things in the dark recesses, the corners, the B and Z grade things. But it just doesn't feel the same because you used to physically go somewhere and look in the corner.
The stakes aren't there.
It doesn't feel quite like, or the to me from my 80s birth vantage point, it doesn't feel the same, but in essence the mechanics are the same. Scouring the edges of the internet and championing those on your edge of the internet is in essence the same idea of creating a zine about a weird record you found in the dollar bin and going to photocopy a thing and make a thing and give it to your 5 friends, because again, and it has the same impact. Nobody gives a shit, but you had fun making it and doing it. And I guess it's the same idea of discovering something online and then coming and making a radio show about it and putting it up on your socials. Your same 5 nerdy friends go, cool. And that's it.
but there was something tactile about it. There was something with the physical manifestation of it. This comes up a lot on Protonic, actually.
Yeah.
And I often will talk about, and whoever I have on will talk about, like thank yous in records. Like when you'd open up like the Nirvana record and like they're thanking. Mudhoney and like Sonic Youth and Melvins and like I'd be like, oh, okay, let's find these bands, and then you go deeper. I mean, that's how I found Unwound, right? Which has changed my world. Like I already was like pretty music obsessive, but that's when I was like, no, I want to do this. This is the thing I want to do, and that's a whole story in and of itself. But like, it was literally just. This is a cool sounding band name. Let's go to the record store. All right, it looks like that. All right, well, let's try it out. It looks interesting.
Yeah.
And like that was before there was even like listening stations and stuff. So just the idea of like sometimes you just get a record based on that looks like that's not going to be boring.
The cover, blind buy. Here's 1250 or whatever it is. Yeah, they need to do.
Yeah, Cherubs or something where it's like, well, that's an audacious cover. Okay, let's let's roll. And I think that there's. Well, I love the immediacy of anyone, anywhere being able to find anything instantly. It's kind of like I don't like the aspect of people just, all right, cool, well, I processed the entire discography of that band. What's next? And then it's like it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. And like there's not as much of a so the trade-off is that you get more, but there's not necessarily the stakes building that happens of like when you look, dude, I made minimum wage at the record store. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't exactly high rolling. And by the way, I wouldn't shop at my record store. I would go down to Amoeba to go shop.
Of course.
My record stores suck.
Yeah. For that time.
For that, I mean, like, whatever. Yeah. And, like, it is what it is. But, like, if you would be, but you would feel like betrayed if you would like buy something and it'd be like bad. You'd be like, ah,
wow.
It would be like, it would be a hit. You know what I mean? And then, but then if you bought something that was great, like, I mean, I still remember, like, I heard the name, The Birthday Party, for years before I got one of the records, and I was like, okay, this has to be awesome. And the first one I got was actually the last record, the Bad Seed, Mutiny Bad Seed. And then, like, when Nick Cave goes, hands up, who wants to die? I'm like, I'm in. I'm in, right there.
That's amazing.
This is the product for me. And then, like, I was like, hell yeah. And then it became one of my favorite bands, right? And
but I love...
But I was rolling the bones. I was like, I don't know what is this band? People with the Birthday Party. That's a dumb name.
Yeah, there's stakes.
You know, or like Arch of Loaf.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There's stakes
yeah,
to
like,
it.
I didn't listen to Arch of Loaf for years. I'm like, what a dumb name.
Yeah.
And then this super cute girl I worked with was like, you would like Arch of Loaf. I'm like,
okay.
Okay. And then I listened to it. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, what are these guitars doing? It's crazy.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Anyway.
I'm trying to think of I want to get back.
This is, by the way, if you listen to my Mario Rubicable episode, Mario and I basically, the first half is like us talking about his bands, and then we just start talking about this for like maybe an hour. And I'm not sure if anyone likes it, but like that dude is like not only an amazing drummer, but he's like, you know, that kind of music historian. I don't know if you know that.
I
dude,
do. Yeah. We it's funny.
What a cool guy just to BS with, you know, if you're into that kind of thing. Like he's just like an encyclopedia of knowledge and just can talk records like all day long and twice on Tuesday.
Yeah. No, he's amazing. I wanted to ask about the
pretty good on them drums
the Unwound
too.
story. Oh, incredible! Yeah, I wanted to ask about the Unwound story, but also, we also kicked off an idea of what was the question of being, or even like this could be an ongoing question of what was the first record that you were disappointed by. Because that I think that is such a as much as the first record that you love,
cool.
a first record that like actually hits you, but that record like you said where you bought it and you were like, oh, this is bullshit. That also, I think, in terms of refining your sense of taste, if you know, to put it kind of bluntly, but you know what I mean. I think that's almost as important as the one that turned you on is the one that you're like, oh yeah, not this. The one that turns you off. You know what I mean? You have to know much about, especially in the indie world or punk rock world. It's so much of you define yourself by what you're not. There's a lot of addition by subtraction. You know, it's like I'm not into this, or you know, and a lot of times as an adolescent, we make these big judgments, and later in our 20s and 30s, we'll go, actually, that band's kind of awesome. But at the first, I was like, this is not my record.
Sure.
Yeah. What was that for you?
I have a great one for that because again, and this is when I worked at the record store that. You know, people are like, oh, Conan, you like that Angular stuff, that, you know, like Wire and Birthday Party. You should check out Gang of Four. I'm like, oh, that's a cool name. I'll check that out. And everybody was like, yeah, Gang of Four. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. And I got a copy of Hard for $1 in the $1 bin. I'm like, wow, this band is so venerated. Why is this in the $1 bin?
That should be a red flag right there. Yeah.
Good
band,
I know.
dollar bin. Yeah.
I should have seen the red flags. But to talk about a misnomer for an album title, by the way, that is the least hard record I've ever heard. And I was like, did I get the right band? Is this the band that everyone's talking about? It feels like it isn't. And I was so bummed out by it that like I didn't listen to Gang of Four for years, and then I just saw like it was like probably an article or something like one of the best records of all time, Entertainment. I'm like, okay, I'll give this another try, and I'm like, oh, this is what everyone was talking about. Okay, and then it became one of my favorite records. But there was a solid 2 years that like my only knowledge of Gang of Four was Hard.
We start at the wrong end of the discography. You know, that's always the tough one.
I didn't know.
No, nobody knows. You're just grabbing records.
And like nope. Yeah. And I guess I could have asked someone, but you know, I didn't. And it's kind of. By the way, doubly funny that my friend Dave Pajo is playing in Gang of Four now.
Insane.
And he's killing it. Yeah. By the way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that still blows my mind.
Of all worlds that you wouldn't think would cross, I feel like we do live in the time now of like your record collection just kind of like blends together. Like, wait, this record sat next to that record for years, and now here they are playing on the same records. Now there are no boundaries anymore.
Yeah, like I've seen him play like some of my favorite songs of all time on stage, and like I'm like, well, I've traded guitar licks with that guy. That's freaking nuts, dude. I mean, like whatever. I'm not that like Slint is like any like thing to sneeze at or anything. I'm just saying that like it's just like that all that stuff. I feel like is like from a different like a different time from us making music.
Right, yeah.
And so like therefore sort of like, wow, that's nuts. Like even like my friend Raj from B Hamilton is now the drummer for the Black Crowes, and I wouldn't say I'm a Black Crowes fan, but it's like I remember seeing them on MTV and being like, oh yeah, these guys, they like the Rolling Stones.
That's so funny.
Good for them.
Yeah, there's a Mario crossover also, or the Earthless dude in Black Crowes.
Earthless, yeah.
It's amazing.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but I also wanted to know. So that you said Unwound was sort of the there was an explosion there of like I can do this.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that. What was that?
So I was already playing guitar at least, and trying to kind of get something together. And I made this I this 4-track recording that at the time I was calling Heavenly Creatures, like after the movie.
Sure, Peter Jackson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful movie.
And it basically it sounded like, whatever, my version of like Big Black birthday party. It had to be Big Black because there's a drum machine. So that's the automatic shorthand, is that I didn't have anyone playing drums.
New Zealand.
And then I mean, like whatever. There's worse things to rip off.
Yeah.
I could name them if you want. But I was I was interested in making music, and like there were sounds I wanted to hear that I was not hearing, and I was sort of like getting my guitar playing up to the level of wanting to do that. Whereas I was coming at it from very much of like when I lived in Modesto. It sounded kind of like the Ramones or like Bad Nirvana, but I was listening to like Butthole Surfers and Sonic Youth and Expanding the Palette and, like whatever. And that's, I never did anything with any of that. Like it was like, and it's very clear to me, like, this isn't where it needs to be yet, but I'm enjoying doing this.
I love the band name Bad Nirvana though. I feel like somebody should take that. Like, hey, we're Bad Nirvana. Like we sound like Nirvana, but just not quite there all the way. We're just not quite as good.
AKA listening to people played any Guitar Center in the 90s.
Yeah.
But then, I got it was actually a tape. It was I think Repetition, I think was the new one that was out at the time. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, this is like, I need to be in this world and doing this. And it just blew me away. And that was also the first example, because they were still around at the time too, for the first go round of a band that, it's approachable. Like I wrote a letter to it was like them and Steel Pole Bathtub that were like my sort of big brother bands,
Bay Area.
But really just Vern.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like I talked to Justin a little bit back in the day, but not so much. And then, it blew my mind that like, okay, this music that's like the most important music in the world to me, there's people that you can talk to. And like how crazy, but it's so intense and it's so good, and these songs are so interesting, and they're doing things that I just haven't heard anyone do before. It was so inspiring, and I was like, okay, I need to do this, and I need to do this with other people that want to do this as badly as I do.
Wow.
And that's what led to Replicator becoming a thing. And then I maintained a friendship with Vern for years, and and he had his ups and downs. He actually recorded and produced the third Replicator record.
That's amazing.
And that's a whole story in and of itself.
In Olympia?
But, yeah, I mean, no, he came down to Oakland to do it. He stayed in my one room. It wasn't even one room. It was a studio apartment in Oakland.
Wow.
And we just freaking, had 8 burritos and recorded this record. And,
That's
it was great experience. And it's a shame that people only remember the alcoholism, because he was a lot more than just that. But he was an alcoholic, don't get me wrong. But he also went into recovery. People usually don't know that, and that's what led to the Household Gods record. I'm glad Unwound is back out and doing it, and Jared is the only person that could be playing bass in that, if that makes sense. Even though like those dudes are not exactly the same type of player, it's the only way that could work. And I'm glad that they're doing it, because like I got to see a whole different, like, whole generation of people that never got to see him.
Right. Yeah, that's
like, and that's like, that's beautiful.
There's a lot to be said for these reunion things. You know what I mean? Where I think it's fun to snipe them online, and you could
people
kick
love
rocks
doing
and
that.
stuff. You know what I mean? But at the same time,
Yeah.
if you're a fan and you never got to see the band, and My Blade Valentine, that reunion, in the late aughts, insane.
Yeah,
it was a dream come true. That was one of the first things that really blew my mind. Pixies, you know what I mean? These kinds of things, like these were bands that by the time I got into them had already broken up, and I only knew them from
Totally.
wearing the cassettes out.
Drive
And
Like
so
Jehu.
yeah.
I got into them. I actually got into them in the 90s, but it was like a year after they had broken up. And I was like, well, God pounded. This is like one of my favorite bands of all time. Like whatever John Reese, stuff John Reese was doing on guitar in that band, I'm like, I don't know what he's doing there, but let me try to rip that off. And I would do a horrible job of it and just come up with my own stuff, basically.
Yeah.
But like
the place to start.
But when I got to see them, like we drove down to San Diego for that show with the organ in that public square, and there was like thousands of people there, and I was like, "What is happening? What is this going to be?" It was so exciting.
That's incredible.
And then and then I got Froberg doing art for me, which is like, oh my God, like which I had to hassle him for like years to do, but like whatever, like it
was worth it.
Again, where you talk about that cross-pollination of like things that you think of as being these huge things in your mind, then you're like, oh yeah, that's just so and so, like whatever.
Right.
Want me to get you on the guest list? I'll text on you.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to do that.
Low key. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep it chill.
That's amazing. Okay, so that's a bit of the music journey, and then podcasting. I think did you run labels? Did you book shows? Were you a promoter? Were you doing a million other things?
Sure.
So obviously, but then podcasting sort of the next thing to hit.
Yeah. So I never stopped touring and never stopped making records. I started up a thing after Replicator called Seismic Wave Entertainment that put out Mount Vicious. Some of the Victory and Associates stuff was on Latest Flames. Some was Seismic Wave. Some was a dual release. And honestly, when I started up Conan Neutron The Secret Friends, I didn't put out everything because I needed to. I just had this insane idea in my mind of how I wanted to do things, and I didn't want to wait for anyone to like give their opinion about it or like have like, no, it needs to be like this, we need to wait a year and a half. Or I'm like, nope, we're not waiting. We're just doing it now. And so that was just me doing everything, right? Like top to bottom, everything, including packing things up, sending them out, and I got through first two records, and I think 3/4 through there was a 12 single collection that were like ostensibly meant to be monthly, and it was somewhere around the 2/3 mark of the singles that like the cracks were really beginning to show. Like we would get orders while we were out on the road, and I would be stressing about it. I'd be like, oh, God damn it! Like these people are not going to get their records for like another 4 weeks or something. Like that's horrible. And it just was very clear. Like I was like, okay, I need some help here. And that's when I was talking to Rainier, who's also my partner in Caterwall, but like about Learning Curve, and that's where he kind of came in and started doing the Secret Friends stuff. And a lot of that was logistics, because I still do some of the fulfillment and stuff, but for me there was just such urgency in getting this music into the world that the idea of having to wait for it and like in this climate was like just not acceptable to me. And I feel differently now. now I accept help, but also like I put out. It's not a done thing. Like there's this band Resurrectionist, Joe Cannon, who he played in Check Engine with the Sweep Lake Johnny guys, and this great band Work, which is one of the best band names of all time, if you ask me. And they were the best band in Milwaukee. I put out the Resurrectionist record this year, and it's great. I mean, they're such an awesome band, and it was like the situation that a lot of bands ran, where they're like, they don't do just one thing. Like they aren't like, oh, that's a post-punk band or that's a psych band or whatever. It's like, no, they're kind of like, it's kind of like a Nick Cavey kind of thing to what they do, but almost like Elvis Costello, like first album Elvis Costello, like they're so, the songs are so good and so uniquely Joe that I was like, screw it, I'll put it out. Which was been a huge investment of time and resources, because I don't do that as much now. But it's very worthwhile because I know that like, okay, now that that's in the world, maybe someone that actually does this more regularly can pull it off and join up with them. But it's not a foregone conclusion. But most of the time, Seismic Wave Entertainment was just an outgrowth of whatever I do with my bands.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Not always. Like I put out a few records that are not involved with me, but that sort of. But then also, I also look at the perspective of booking too. Like I book our own tours and stuff like that. Although sometimes I wonder why. But it isn't because people haven't asked to do it for us. It's just that the level of what we can do versus like the amount of time that we can allocate for it versus the equity that someone's going to have that's outside the world of the band and doing it hasn't made sense for us. Like whatever. If like, Billions or someone like calls up and like, hey, we want to book you even though you're only out like, 25 days of the year. Okay, great. But that's not happening.
Yeah.
And it's this. And every band I talk to, which is like, because I come from, do you remember Book Your Own Fucking Life?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That's the world I come from.
Yep.
Yeah, like literally, not even a book of like, here's like phone numbers of people from around like the country that will throw you a show if you contact them. And you send them like a tape or a CD or something in the mail. And then you follow up with them on the phone later to whatever. And then like, an email came in. Obviously, that became easier. Social media, it's all so easy now. But since I came up from that world, I have been able to like help like bands I love, like friends bands with like tour like Juna, for instance. I don't know if you know Juna. No. Like I helped out Donna with her tour. They're amazing. They're so good. But I'm able to do that because of that. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because like I'm a realist, like a pragmatist about that. That like if Conan Neutron The Secret Friends started touring to the point that like it made sense for a booking agent to do that, and if I knew the booking agent had as much of a stake in the success of it as I did, which is like, my dog, I'm going to be 46 in December. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't, it's the stutter steps hit harder than when you're like 23.
Oh yeah.
And so like, so I try to make sure that there's as few of those as possible. And that's why, like, I was on Tomorrow We Die, which is John Wisniewski from Akimbo and Sandwriters podcast. It's talking about tour stories and stuff. I realize all my tour stories are from the best bad tour stories are from a long time ago. Because now it's like, no, it's pretty boring.
That's great.
Yeah, it's like we'd have a pretty good time. We play the show. We go to the hotel room. It's like that's about it. There's no crazy.
There's food in the
near
morning.
Murder stories.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like
gas stations.
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
I want to keep the danger on stage, not on the highway and not in the lodging situation.
Yeah.
But anyway, so years and years and years of self-booking everything, putting out these records, just being in the world, led to me, it was 9 years ago, I guess, where I was just like, I hear these podcasts and I'm not hearing the kind of show I would like to hear. And it was literally just like how we're talking right now, right? Just like this very real, frank discussions that don't overly mythologize like the work of being a musician, because it is work. People don't like to think that it's work for some reason. And I blame things like, look at our culture, Almost Famous, right? Everybody thinks of Almost Famous and think of touring bands. It's like, I assure you that that's not the case. Dan from the Bismarck and Why Are We Doing This says like people think of Almost Famous and it's more like The Road, which I thought was like a great Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, that yes, the Viggo Mortensen movie with the kid and everything, but yeah, the book as well.
Yeah, the real good time movie with Viggo Mortensen. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like obviously that's played for comedic effect, right? But it's a great. Good example.
It's not too far off. Yeah.
I mean,
your wife has died. Your girlfriend's died. You're on your own. You're kind of wandering around, hoping not to get eaten by cannibals. That nice old couple is going to take you in the basement and dismember you.
Yeah. Everything is horrific and horrible.
It sounds about right. But that sounds like touring England, honestly.
Except for the worst teeth.
Yeah. Sorry, England.
Apologies to all English listeners. But I think that there aren't those representations in culture and media, especially larger culture and media.
Oh yeah.
It's just everyone's just when they talk about what's the there's no working class in America, just temporarily embarrassed millionaires, right?
Wow.
In that same way, there's no working class for bands, just temporarily embarrassed superstars.
Yeah, that's it's so interesting. I've never seen any representation in media, right? Because even the punk stuff just feels overly like exploited or something, or in some kind of like trumped up sort of way. And you think even or like the '70s stuff, like Ramones were on a major label. The Clash were on a major label. They were
exactly.
Sex. It's like all these people were on. They were on the same label as Donnie and Marie, or and you're just like, okay, that doesn't.
If you're
matter.
touring in a bus and you have like tour support and stuff like that, like, well, good on you.
Sure,
I would do that in a heartbeat, by the way. But but it's not. There's a whole, as you well know, a whole subculture of bands that they're doing it for the love of it, and sometimes to their own detriment, to the detriment of their own lives and finances, credit scores.
Right. But even something like SLC Punk or something too, like that just doesn't feel real either, because it's like it feels like everyone's pretending. I think if you've ever been to a basement show where there's where it's really fun and really depressing. There's something you have to drill deeper into the sort of the psychology of what makes these people do this, kind of live this nomadic sort of lifestyle, and then also the fans as well. I think it's wrong on all levels. You know what I mean? Like Riff Randall,
absolutely, and that's why
there's a lot of Riff Randalls out there, but it doesn't
right.
But there's not a lot of Ramones out there or something.
No, totally. And I say that as a huge fan of Rock and Roll High School. I completely agree with that. But so this documentary, it's called "Why Am I Doing This?" and full disclosure in a minute.
Okay,
but that's not why I'm advocating for it. It's one of the only things I think that's like, that kind of tells it straight, and it gives the reasons like why you would do this, even though it makes no sense whatsoever to a certain degree, and some of us get to like build a sustainable career out of it.
Yeah.
And when people are like, want advice, and every once in a while people come to me for advice on that, I'm like, look, only way I can give you advice for my path is be Conan Neutron. That's literally it. Like, I mean, I don't know why. I've never stopped.
Yeah, low overhead.
If you stick around,
is always my advice. Don't spend the money. Whatever. If you want to make a living being creative, learn to live like out of a backpack eating a can of beans. Yeah. If you can be happy on the minimal amount of money output as possible, spending next to $0 a day, then you can live as a creative. That's the only way. But you have to not only be tolerant, but you have to enjoy that style of like, I spent no money today.
You make it an
adventure. I didn't do anything. Everything was free today. If that's your jam and you like that kind of world, then yes, then you could do it.
Yeah, if you're like, oh, I want to have a decadent meal at every tour stop and whatever, I'm like, well, then congratulations. If that's more important to you, but that's not. You're not going to be able to keep it sustainable.
Yeah, more than one pair of pants. Do you need to wear more than one pair of pants in a week? Right. Then you will not be able to tour. Can you wear one pair of pants for a month? Good. Then you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Have you ever flipped your underwear inside out? Good. You can do it.
Exactly. Yeah. One is especially like, I mean, there's so many, and that's what like when people come from me for advice, which I'm always happy to give out. I'm like, I'm like, keep it sustainable, and whatever that means for you. Like, don't spend money on things that don't matter, and like when we tour now. The merch table, it's like a traveling Etsy store, man. There's like 70 different things. There's like flashing lights and stuff. There's like 4 different T-shirt designs. Yep. I used to mock bands, usually pop punk bands, in the 2000s that had a merch table like that. And we're sitting there with our one T-shirt, and like a couple CDs, like, that we deigned to put out on the merch table. But it's like, people can laugh all they want, man. It's what keeps the freaking van moving.
Yeah,
like
it's the gas money.
And it's like, how can you do this? Well, it's like I'm constantly putting new merch items out, and it's sort of like whatever people want. Are 8-tracks in? Great, let's do an 8-track. Yeah. They're not, thankfully. But
so the podcast. So you felt like there was no representation of it. Yeah. So how do you do it?
So that's the world I'm coming from, right? And I'm like, well, it's a shame that there isn't any, because I need to be explicitly clear, and I'm not trying to like cast shade at other podcasters that operate in the same motif. There wasn't really anything doing that. Mm-hmm. At the time. And I was like, well, it would be cool to like not just hear from like superstars that like, we all love, but also like hear from people that like maybe are that should have been big but like weren't, or maybe like never were going to be big but are worthwhile nonetheless. So people that aren't household names and stuff like that. And so that's literally what the show began as. And my conceit is another thing that I do that no one else does that I'm aware of, or very few anyway, is I do it live.
Yeah.
Because I had another show with my ex-bandmates before that did about 25 episodes that was more like a traditional podcast. You record it, you know, some light editing, this and that, et cetera, et cetera. And it basically, that started off just, we would do these college radio interviews and they would be very boring and we would get bored. And so we just kind of take it over and do whatever we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which honestly, very cheeky and probably rude of us, but it was very entertaining too. And I just like the idea of doing it in the box, which is to say that it's not so important of the people listening to it live, but the fact that it's done live. And so I started in the morning originally. Horrible mistake. That lasted for about a year, and I was like, nope, I'm not a morning person at all. Like we're doing this. It's you know, we started this at like noon my time, and I'm like, yeah, that's about it. That's about the earliest I think I could do something like this.
Talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, my natural gravitation is like, you know, I start to get sleepy at like 1.
There we go. Yeah.
In the morning, not 1 p.m.
I'm gonna throw a wild card out there. You have no small children in your house.
Correct.
Okay, that's how the luxury of 1 a.m. bedtimes is something afforded to the childless of this world. I love that.
Yeah,
yes.
You don't get the option when there's kids around. But so I shifted to it was Thursdays at 8, 7, 6, 5, so 5 p.m. Pacific, but 8 Eastern. And I just do it live and did it for years. Had a co-host at first, and I started off being more like kind of like not just straight interview, but I would like play like some more music, and it was like a sort of like, you know, talk about like whatever issues were happening, like especially in music or whatever. And then I just gradually gravitated towards like, okay, it's very clear that the interview parts of this are something special. This is something that like you are not hearing anywhere else. And that just gradually became, and then my co-host left, and it just became me talking to whoever. And I was doing it and consistently doing it for a very long time. And there was something about the fact that during the pandemic, so when the pandemic hit, we were actually out on tour when the pandemic hit. Well, we got through a couple dates of it at least. And everything got canceled, right? And so, and at the same time, I also had a day job that I was taking time off of. That like everyone got furloughed immediately, and people, because it was a government thing, and anyway, it wasn't an employee, just line item, goodbye. Wow. So no touring, no day job, no source of revenue other than unemployment, which, by the way, does not. The Mitch McConnells of the world think that that's like, you know, some great boon for everybody. Like, no. Like, I was like selling amp heads. I was selling like anything that wasn't bolted down pretty much. And I was left with all this time to just stare at the wall, you know.
Yeah.
Stare at each other, wait till we die, as the Big Black song says. And I was not in a great headspace. So I was like, well, what can I do? I was like, well, I can do Protonic. And then everyone was in the same boat, right? Everyone was in the same boat of just like, well, I'm just sitting around, nothing to do. So I started doing episodes like 1 a day.
Wow.
which is cool. Crazy.
Yeah.
And
they gave you something to do, something to wake up for, something to get up. Yeah.
It was literally, you hit the nail on that. Something to wake up for.
Yeah.
something to focus my day around. And there was something about me being 5-6 years, whatever it was, into doing it and having the skills, and again, the show being what it was, and the combination of that and everyone's availability, and then people just being around, music fans, people that like, you know, maybe they play in bands, maybe they don't, but they're just around and like bored out of their minds, you know, trying to like figure out what to do with their time, engaging with it. It grew like, I kid you not, it was like 1,000-fold.
It's amazing.
Which is crazy. Yeah. It's like, overnight success, like 6 years in the making, right?
Yeah. Preparation met opportunity.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And that comes back to, and people may be wondering why I'm telling these, big winding stories about like booking and touring and stuff like that. It's just about sticking around.
Yeah.
It's about sticking around and doing the work, and it's not, and you can't. Luck is a big thing too, right? And I'm a lot of things. Lucky ain't one of them. But in this case, like it just so happened that everything kind of hit at the same point, and the show grew to be like literally a part of people's routine.
Yeah,
where it was like, oh, I listen every day. This is like a life preserver in the ocean for me. Like, great, me too.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. I started listening to a lot more podcasts because of the pandemic. I treated the idea, my wife would work in her office. We had a studio downtown in downtown LA, and then I would drop the kids off in the morning. I'd go to my studio. She would go to her work. And then all of that obviously changed for everybody. And we're all, 4 men in a boat. And I just treated it like tour. I'm like, oh, okay, I can live in close quarters. I know how to get along with people. You know what I mean? Like, it's cool. Yeah. I stick to myself, and I kind of explained to my wife. I was like, I'm not going to be rude. You know what I mean? But like, here's a skill set I've learned of how to coexist with 4 to 10 people in very tight quarters. But we got
on the space station.
We got to give each other, exactly. But you got to give each other space. You got to give each other time. Like, I'm gonna need a timeout. I'm gonna put my hand up. I'm gonna need 5 minutes. I'm gonna just kind of go relax, decompress. Like, we don't have to get on each other's nerves. We can, and it probably will happen despite whatever we do. But we could do this, especially with at that point we had a not quite 1-year-old and a 7-year-old, so we had real little kids. But anyway, the part of my routine was just I got little earbuds and I would listen to podcasts. I was just going about the day. Like, I'd be the baby would fall asleep. I'd be give the baby a bottle. He'd fall asleep, and I'd just have a podcast on. I'm like, this is great. I could sit here and I'll let him just take a nap on my arms. I got nowhere else to go or nothing else to do, but I can listen to all these, wacky friends yabbering it up in my ear. And it was great. And I think that's where I made a big part of my routine.
My friends who live in my phone.
Exactly. Yeah. All my friends now. Yeah. I can check in with them. But it became a routine. Like, there's ones I like to listen to when I take a shower. There's ones I like to listen to. I bought a little waterproof speaker, and there's
You're doing the dishes. You listen to this podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just became part of the thing. Yeah. I'm going to go take the trash out, throw my headphones in, just, listen to 10 or whatever, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of whatever I can catch, just while I'm doing chores around the house or just going out for a walk or something. Yep. And so, it became a huge part of, I think, just a cultural change of like integrating media like that. You can press pause and play at your demand versus like a radio show. We're like, oh, I only caught a few minutes of it, or I had to stay long in my car to hear the rest of this interview. Those old days of that kind of thing.
It's like, right there waiting for you. Yeah. It's right. So I was the beneficiary, the show was anyway, of people being in that sort of situation and big time. And people were going back in the catalog and being like, oh man, this episode with Ray Washam, like, it was so great. I'm like, great, that was like a lifetime ago. I don't even remember what I said, and people would reference things that like we said in the episode. I'm like, haha, cool. What are you talking?
It's all recorded. Yeah. You don't. Yeah, you don't.
And I'd have to go back. So I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But like, I was definitely the beneficiary of that. And you said something so smart of that, like, finding time and taking space for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's like something that I think it's easier I know it's easier when you come up from touring. For that same reason, I got back into watching movies.
Oh yeah,
during the pandemic as well. And so Lindsay doesn't like going to the movie theater.
Fair enough.
So yeah. And then I also just got really busy with touring and stuff. So there's a whole like probably 15-year era of movies that I basically missed.
What years is that? That's 2000 to 2015, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And like I was like, I know that there's some good stuff here I should probably watch, and like now it's all on the internet because like they suddenly started putting stuff up on streaming, and so I got back into that. Like I made a Letterboxd account and like to track like what stuff I wanted, and then like I got back into watching it, and then so happened that other people that were doing podcasts would have me on as guests sometimes to like talk about movies. Like, hey, do you want to be on and talk about Total Recall? Yes, I do want to talk about Total Recall. That sounds great. Yeah. And by nature of me just being good on air and like and being knowledgeable on the topic, like I was good, right? Like, which is to say that honestly, when I was in the half semester of junior college I took, the only thing I wanted to do was cinematography.
Oh,
that's
great.
it.
Yeah.
And I didn't pursue it. We had a public access TV show, which is a whole separate kettle of fish. But like, I didn't pursue it at all. But I have a deep interest in film, and like I cannot overestimate how important my local video stores were too. About being like, oh, you should check out The Hitcher by Ida Lupino. It's great. I'm like, okay, I will. In the same way that I was that way for the fourth coolest record store out of 4 in Berkeley. To anyone that would dare ask, like I had people that would do that for me for movies, and so I had this deep cinematic knowledge that I rapidly was like filling back up, just like the almost 2 decades where I just wasn't paying any attention at all.
That's fun.
And then I ended up being like a featured guest on Movie Night Extravaganza, and then they were like, "You want to just be on this regularly?" And I'm like, sure. Yeah. What else am I up to? Yeah, that sounds great. And it was a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun because it's Protonic. I'm very comfortable with what Protonic is, but it's a very solitary affair. I handle every aspect of the production. It's generally, not always, generally 2 people talking, just like how we're talking right now.
Yeah.
But like being on a panel is like, oh, you're working collaboratively. You have to listen to each other. You have to but it's also like, I don't have to worry so much about driving the show or certain elements of it, where it's like, it's not like I'm just like sitting back in the cut and just having a laugh necessarily, but like it scratches a different itch that way. And it's also just, I think, I've noticed personally that musicians either like get really into stand-up comedy or really get into movies.
Makes sense. It's the thing they wish they could be doing. Like, actors want to be musicians, exactly. Musicians want to be actors. Yeah, or
and comedians too. Where it's just hilarious that like nobody wants to do the thing that they're doing. But if you're a lifer at what you're doing, which I am for sure. I mean, at this point, it's like can there be any doubt? Like you talk about the efficacy of and the success levels all you want. I'm definitely a lifer at what I'm doing.
Sorry, I was going to jump. But do you know Jesse Michaels from Op Ivy? And
yeah, dude,
he had a great stand-up set. I saw his stand-up set.
I believe it because he's hilarious. I actually so all right. So since you invoke Jesse Michaels, my ex and his ex-girlfriend worked at the same at Expression Center for New Media in Emeryville. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like a recording school. Anyway. It's a recording school. They were on staff though, so the staff was like the least rock and roll people ever, right? And so we were at some work function. You're just there with your partner, right? And like they're socializing. And you're like, I don't know any of these people. So it's when I discovered that and Jesse discovered mutually like, oh, we're rock and roll people. Oh, sick, awesome. So like Jesse and I, we were like talking about like Guided by Voices and Devo or whatever, and like we were just like inseparable like the entire night for it. So I have one of the strangest like Jesse Michaels origin stories because I never saw Op Ivy back in the day.
No, me neither.
Even though I like them.
Yeah.
It was like just a little bit before my time, right? But like I was like, we were basically each other's like lifeboat survivors for a work function.
That's amazing.
Which is great because it's like. It makes sense because none of these people were like remotely interested. I mean, Lisa was because Lisa like played drums and whatever. But it's like none of the.
Sure, we've all been there. Those boring work parties.
They were teaching people to do something creative, but none of the people on the staff were very creative ultimately. So it was just like, but yeah, that's. I'm only bringing that story up because you mentioned Jesse, who's great, by the way, and I haven't talked to in years, and I should probably drop a line. I should have him on the show.
Yeah,
Jesus
have him on the
Christ.
show. He's got a new band. He's got a new band with Tim Armstrong. Did you see that? Yeah. Get him on.
Did see that. I should absolutely have him on because that's one of the great. I got another story of Ronnie Burnett too, but like, if we start with that,
love Ronnie.
We'll be here all day. Another just amazing human being.
He's a record store nerd.
Why did I bring that up?
Oh.
Yeah, that's the best kind of record store nerd.
Yeah.
It's like get me, him, and like Mario together in a room. Forget it.
You're ruined. You're screwed.
Maybe that should be the band. We should make a band. But instead of playing music, we'll just talk about records.
That's a
I'd
great
write
one.
those guys about that.
There you go.
That'd be a great shtick.
Three-way convo. We put the record out. Like
it'll be like a YouTube series, and we'll all be in the practice room.
You're holding your
but
instruments.
we'll never actually play any music.
Yeah. Everyone's holding their instruments. You're at the microphone. You can hear the hum of the amps behind you. Every once in a while, kick drum, pop, 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 pop. Just like, okay, just checking, tuning the snare. Amazing.
God, that's really good. I bet those dudes would do it too.
Oh,
that's really good.
Hit them up.
Wow.
Awesome. Well, dude, I think we're probably going to wrap it up here. We've gone over an hour. I've had so much fun.
We didn't even mention Caterwaul too, which is coming up.
Tell me. I have no idea when this is coming out anyway. So just so you know, I don't know.
That's actually it'll. Yeah. By the time this comes out, I think it'll be over. But it's a yearly event. Yeah. So, and by the way, I think this is such a genius idea for a show.
Oh,
because one of the.
It's too kind.
And I think I told you an email privately, but I'll mention it on the show. I was talking to Brian Walsby about it, who's a great comic artist, a great drummer. He played in Polvo, Shiny Beast, that I wish more people knew about.
That's a great name. The Beefheart record.
And one of the guys, they're most known for the fact that the guitar player plays in Red Fang now.
Oh, okay.
The guy that's not in Last One, he does.
Okay.
Anyway, whatever. But he's another dude that, like, he's not just known for, like, the one thing. And like, in this day and age, in this environment, like, it's and you don't often get to choose what it is, like, you're known for. Like, there's people that, like, listen to Proton Controversial that, like, are like, oh, this guy plays in a band? Which is why I started just including that in the intro, and vice versa. We're like, oh, you got a podcast, and then there'll be this cross pollination. We're like, oh, cool. Hey, I listened to the show, or I listened to the band. It was cool. Oh, awesome, great. But it's not that I have sought out to, like, I'm a guy that must be doing a million things at all times. No, not at all. But I will do things if they're worthwhile. And again, if I see that there's an opportunity for like Secret Friends is the same thing. I wasn't hearing the kind of music I wanted to hear, so I made it. And like part of that was a challenge of like, can I do this after like years and years of only working collaboratively? Answer: yes. Okay, cool. Then let's do it better. And then it kind of took on its own energy, its own life. Caterwaul is the same sort of thing. So Caterwaul is a 4-day music festival in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's this year it's like 56 bands, I think, if I remember correctly. But it's a lot. And it's high quality of bands and downright affordable compared to most things at that level. And it's ostensibly because it's a community event. It's sort of like, well, this is representing this particular substrata of weirdos, of these weirdo bands, and the people that like either make that music or love that music, and it's for the people that it's for, right? And a few of them are well known, sure, and most of them are not. And this is just an opportunity to sort of like get together and vibe on it. And it's something that Reiner from Learning Curve, again, my label guy, and I do this. I guess when people hear this, the second one will have passed, and we'll maybe even be starting to work on the third one. But like it's something that's it's a labor of love, but the accent's on the labor. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because you know how, being a musician yourself, you know how musicians are, right?
Oh yeah.
And like it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
And so imagine doing like 50 times in a row, and then there you go. You've got a good start. But
I've played enough festivals where I would never want to be the one organizing it. You are I don't know which side of the Sado or the masochism. One of them. You love torture, whatever that is. To anybody that ever works a festival is just like the band is the easy part.
It's the worst.
I mean,
it's easy.
We love
it's
it.
easy.
Yeah. We show up. I mean, you can complain as much as you want about parking or your set times or where you got to do stuff, but every single other person there, including all the sound staff, all the stage hands, food, tickets, security, a million times harder job than anybody that holds an instrument. If you're standing on stage with an instrument in your hand, your day is golden. Yeah. Everybody else is having the worst time of their life. So you're
like, oh, what a nice time.
No. Yeah. Your dumb band can make a sound for 30 minutes. Everybody else is sacrificing their sanity for that to make that happen. Yeah, it's insane.
And I may have in one of the interviews, because we kind of try to keep our names out of it, not like to be a thing. We want to be about the event. We want to be about the music. And for some reason that's impossible now. Everyone's like, no, we want bios of everybody, and like we want pictures. Like, it's not about us. Yeah. Like, just let it be Caterwaul. Yeah. I know. I personally hate it because I'm a big fan of the thing being the thing and let the thing be what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like it's I've done interviews where I basically said some summation of what you just said, where it's like, yeah, it's just it's you know, you find funny ways to say it, but it's a labor of love.
I feel like Rollins
really
has a good riff on it, right? Or was there a great post?
Oh
on
yeah,
it,
the thing.
like, you are not special. You are not something. Whatever. Your backstage pass does not grant you the right to be a dick or something.
Yeah, you should make what they make, and then the other way around too. I can't remember exactly.
As only Rollins could do it. Yeah,
so
he very nail on the head there.
Like, well said.
Of course, right? Yeah. Why wouldn't it be? Cool. So Caterwaul, Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends, Protonic Reversal.
Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I look like an egomaniac because I got my name in things. I know I just said like I don't like have my name in things. I got two of my main things have my but there was another thing called Protonic Reversal that now is gone.
Oh, thank God.
When I made it. But like now I'm like, well, okay, it's Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal.
But I have to ask you, as a man who was given the
moving extravaganza.
Oh,
too.
moving extravaganza. Yes,
I always forget to plug that, and then those guys get mad.
Yeah. But I have to ask you though, I was born Randy Stephen Randall at the hospital. As I was born. Yeah. What were you born as? Do you talk about this? Is this?
I was born, much to my eternal chagrin, I was born a Conan.
Okay. Yeah.
But I chose to become a Neutron.
There it is. Okay. That's great. And then how pissed were you when Conan O'Brien started a podcast?
When he started. Well, I was not pissed at all when he became famous because I was like, cool, pronounce it like that, dude.
Yeah, better than
because that was a saving grace.
Yeah, you weren't
because I had people mispronouncing my name for
the
entire time through grade school and all that. Yeah. When he started a podcast that has the word friend in the title too.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it messed up
your SEO is all screwed up now.
SEO. But also, the problem with having a sentence-long band name is people don't say that the whole band name very often at all either.
What does that get shortened to? Is there an acronym you like? Or no?
I say Neutron Friends, and I wish that would catch on, but people usually just say Conan Neutron. Oh, I guess you Conan Neutron.
Well, yeah, you are the front man. Yeah.
I know. It's like we're just gonna see James Brown. Okay, like it's. I guess if I would have. It is a good problem to have. Yeah. If I had it to do over again, I probably would not have picked a sentence-long band name. But I wasn't even thinking about it for live shows when we made the first record. I was like, well, we need to call it something. Let's call it this. And Secret Friend, it isn't just the literalist translation of that. It's also like that's like if you're in high school and like the cool arty kid that the jock is like friends with but can't let his cool friends know about that. That's the real definition, which I think is a more surreptitious and kind of cool thing.
And the science background, was this part of your field of study, or it's more in a science fiction way, or where does the science motif fit into your life and your background?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, man.
Please.
I
save the bullshit questions for the end, by the way. There you go. Yeah.
When I had my mid-20s life crisis, which is a thing as far as I'm concerned, Replicator was still around, but things were starting to spin down. Like Ben had said that he was done touring, and Chris and I were like, "Well, we're done touring. Like, the band's over."
That's a good sign for the end. Yeah, when somebody's like, "I'm not touring." Like, okay, I don't think we're a band.
And we broke up with like 9 months ahead of time. We recorded all our last songs. We let everyone know all the last shows were a big celebration. It was one of the best capstones to a band that I think I've ever seen. If I do say so myself. Like, it just was, It was nice because it was like, it took all the pressure off and then everything was just fun.
Better than the 5-year Kiss End of the Road tour?
Yeah, when is this road going to end? It seems like it's going on for forever. But I briefly had a moment where I'm like, where I was like, well, I could go teach physics.
Okay. Dude.
That was my, like, potentially, like, I could go do that because I have a deep interest in science. And it was a thing I really considered, and then Chris and I ended up starting up another band, and it didn't go that way. But yeah, I'm when I was a kid, the only thing I wanted to be when I was a kid was an astronaut. The only thing. I had no backup plan, and then that didn't happen, obviously. But
yeah,
but like I was like obsessed with it, and I've always been like a science obsessive. So
got it. Is there schooling behind it? Did you get degrees or no? There's lots of books. Nope. Do you have a deep library of stuff?
Yeah. Yes. Like I'm an autodidact for sure. Like And it's funny because like I'm friends with like academics and like I can like hold my own in a conversation like and beyond. So people be like, oh yeah, where'd you go to school? I'm like, I took half a semester of Modesto Junior College and that's it. And then they get kind of like uncomfortable and upset, and I'm like, sorry, I don't know. Like, you want to talk about Heidegger some more? Let's go. You know, like, it's what it is. I definitely, I think, missed the exit for like going back to school. I think I would get something at the time though. I wouldn't have gotten anything out of it. I just wanted to like get out and start doing stuff, and I can't recommend that for everyone. It worked for me, but again, that's because I'm a voracious devourer of books and knowledge and so on and so on.
You have to know what your engine is, like what puts gas in your engine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can do it yourself, then that's great. I think like
I mean, look at someone like Buzz Osborne. Like he's brilliant. He's like a super smart guy, but he doesn't have any like professional school. You don't need that.
Right. Yeah.
People say you need that. I'm like, no, it can be an enjoyable experience. You can get something out of it, but you don't need it. It doesn't mean you're just look. I've seen people that have graduate degrees that are dummies, like just stupid people. Yeah. And I've seen people that like never have got their GED, maybe, but like they're brilliant, you know. Yeah. But it's just like that doesn't necessarily mean they're suited for schooling, too. and that's I again, nobody wants to hear that.
I also believe people don't look up. You put on a resume. You have a master's degree in physics from Berkeley.
Yeah.
No one's who's gonna question that. If you have the goods, the goods to back it up, and you could actually do the job that you're applying for, just write it down. No one's ever looked at
about quantum mechanics and some string theory. Cool, let's go.
The biggest thing I think college does, in terms of
maybe if you're going to be a teacher for it, I bet they probably look it up, but. Maybe not. I don't know.
I question it. I would love to talk to HR people, in these fields of stuff. I think
someone you talk to in this show probably has worked in HR.
I will drill down on that further. That'll be an ongoing longer season story arc. But what was I going to say?
It's a B-plot, but
college is good for getting you to sit on your hands for 4 years when you want to jump out of your skin and make all the worst mistakes you can make. And I think to a lot of employers or older people, people in their 40s and 50s, God forbid.
Yeah.
It's if you see a young person in their 20s that can show you that they got a diploma, that they can show up to work 5 days a week at the same time, and if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it, and that's all it really is. What the content of it, the specificness, the speciality, that's all just to keep you going back 5 days a week. You need to prove that you're a viable cog in the wheel of the capitalist sort of workforce that grinds people down. And so college is a great way of showing that you went through the Cub Scouts of the workforce. You showed up. You weren't drunk when all you wanted to be was drunk and stoned and fucking everything that moved. Yeah. You somehow made it to a classroom, which is a laboratory for future workstations, 5 days a week at least, or 4 days a week, whatever it was, and you passed and you passed through the Cub Scouts and you got all your badges, and then you put those on your resumes and you go forward. I think that's really that I've understood the value of college, and again, that's not bad. It also you call it what it is, similar to like Jack Watterson at Future Music. Podcasts are just a bunch of friends talking in your ear when you're bored and lonely by yourself, and you need that. People need that.
Mean, but not inaccurate.
Yeah. But in the same sort of way, I think college has a big value. If you can get thousands of 20-year-olds to all move in one direction and have some purpose, find a purpose in their life, and find something that makes their life worth living and give them meaning down the road. Hopefully, that's what college can do, even if it's not in the classroom, but just in the general social ideas and going to shows or learning about the world in general. And you do it with a safety net of, well, you're not going to get fired. You're probably not going to die, hopefully, if you're not, out of bounds too far. But it's a place, it's a laboratory for 20-year-olds to sort of try on a lot of different hats and to look ridiculous, be in a ska band for 2 weeks or whatever it is. And then you come out of it and you go, okay, now I know who I am, and these are my friends I've made, and here's the rest.
That wasn't for me. I didn't stick with that. Or maybe it was. I don't know.
But it gets you walking down a road that will hopefully lead you somewhere else versus the kind of the milling around and smoking cigarettes out in front of 7-Eleven, which.
Yeah, and I think I did all of, well, not all. Yeah. It was not in a ska band, but like I did a lot of those things. And also I grew up, I had parents who partied, so drug use was not really a rebellious act. Let's put it that way. But like I did all that already, just did it on my own. But for me, at the time, schooling felt like a holding pen. It was holding me back from doing what I wanted to do. And just going out to the Bay Area and get a minimum wage job at the fourth best record store out of 4 in Berkeley, that was an education for me. And it was something that, like, starting in with music and going on tour and finding out, like, firsthand, going to all these different cities around the country and seeing how other people lived and, like, seeing the world from the highway and from the stage, like, huge in my formative development. And honestly, what humanistic empathy I have and understanding come from that as well. And I'm not saying it's everyone's path, but it was my path, and it worked. And again, sustainably, like, I have, like, these things that are sustainable that I do, and how did I get there? And be Conan Neutron. That's the only. Which is terrible advice, right?
No,
but
those are great words to go out on.
Everyone needs to find their own thing, right? Find out what your path is, and then recognize it. And just lay into and do it as hard as you can.
Find your own Conan Neutron. Find your internal Conan Neutron. Be your own Conan Neutron.
Lord help you.
Well, Conan, thank you so much for being here.
Dude, thank you so much.
I had so much fun. Cool.
Yeah.
There he is, the man, the myth, the legend, the Conan Neutron. That was really fun. I was really stoked to talk to him. I mean, he does not stop. And it's such a great story. And, really inspiring. I had heard about Conan a bunch for years through friends. And when I was thinking about doing the podcast, I definitely had thought, like, okay, well, there's people doing this similar kind of thing. I'm not, so far out in the weeds here. But I don't know. It's really, if you haven't heard Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal, please go subscribe to it and follow it and check out all the amazing interviews he has with some of the luminaries, kind of post-punk, art rock, noise rock, whatever you want to call it, alternative rock luminaries that he's talked to over there over the years. And as well as, if you're a fan of movies, check out the Movie Night Extravaganza podcast, as well as YouTube files of it. There's it's really fun. It looks great. They have a lot of video elements that are part of the podcast. That's really great. And also make sure you look out for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends coming live to your town sometime this fall. And if you're not familiar with his music, or if you want to support him in more ways, go to his website, neutronfriends.com. That's NEUTROFRIENDS.com for all things Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Awesome. We'll see you next time. Bye.